Hello?
Hello.
Hey man, how's it going?
Doing great, Benjamin, if that is your real name.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Benjaminpolitics, if that is your real
Alright.
full name.
Some people think that maybe my last name isn't politics, but I try to keep that part a secret.
It's a good last name.
But it is
Politics.
Benjamin.
Yeah. All right, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's
Nice.
great to finally meet you, man.
Yeah, likewise. I just had a phenomenal quesadilla, okay? So if I clear my throat at all, it's just all the cheese. Yeah, so, okay. All right, wait, help me out here. I don't conduct my show in a professional manner, okay? I just have people on for time slots. I was made aware of you. I saw you did a response video to one of my TikToks where you were saying systemic racism isn't a thing. Back then, okay, this could be my memory failing me. I remember thinking you were one of those types of conservatives who called themselves a classical liberal. But now when I look at your thing, it says minarchist. Did that change, or was that always the case? My memory's just bad.
At the time I was a minarchist. I've kind of like gone down. You know, I started off as a conservative and then I slowly went down. But at the time, yeah, I was a minarchist.
Okay. Well, it still says, so minarchist, pro-life, equal rights, capitalism, freedom. Capitalism and freedom right next to each other. Oof. To each their own, I guess.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I saw that you made a response. There's like people messaging me and like freaking out. And I went on the stream and you're just like looking at my video. And then last night was kind of funny because you looked at my my socialism video where I'm like, if socialism doesn't stop right now, I'm gonna have to intervene.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a meme. So
No, this one is really good. This one is iconic.
Thank you.
I would say
it actually went viral on Twitter, so I thought that was kind of funny.
No, it's good. It is iconic. Well, I am a socialist. I'm not stopping. Will we have to come to blows, or are we cool?
I don't know, man. I'm kind of built different, so.
Oof, okay. All right, we'll see. All right, we'll see how this convo goes then. I'll be on my guard. All right. Wait, chat wants to know what minarchism is. I have a feeling we might have different definitions. Do you wanna throw it out for them?
Yeah, I would say like the basic definition would be it's where the job of the government is restricted to police, courts, and oh great, it's gonna slip my mind now. Police, courts, and military, of course, yeah. Police, courts, and military.
All right. So get the government out of like postal service, medical care, education, economic regulation. Okay. So we keep all the worst parts. Okay, wait, hold on. We're not debating this. I'm taking shots. Okay, you wanted to talk about abortion?
Yeah.
All right. Hit me up. How do you justify removing government intervention from almost every aspect of public life, but also wanting to make illegal abortion?
Well, in my stance, the biggest thing is I want the government to protect human rights and human life, and I believe in everyone having equal rights and equal protections under the law. So, you know, you should protect people's lives, and I consider a fetus to be a person.
Don't you protect people's lives by putting environmental regulations on factories, kind of like downstream?
I mean, that's kind of a different debate. I don't want to go too much into that. You know, if you ever want to have like an environmentalism debate, I've got some people who may want to do that. I'm not very good on environmentalism. But
yeah. Okay, so so generally speaking, arguments on abortion go one of two directions. They usually go either to the philosophical argument of what personhood means, or they go to the argument of legal precedent concerning bodily autonomy in the states. Both of one of them, the personhood argument, really depends on a bunch of characteristics and personal definitions and what philosophies you relate to. And one of them is more concretely legal. So right now in the United States, as per our legal precedent, there isn't really a framework which would allow for the government to prevent us to do something to our own bodies, even if doing that thing is what preserves the life of another. That's of course the the violinist argument. Right. So what would your response be to that?
So do you want me to start at personhood? I would say that's kind of the
sure. We can go with personhood because you would have to fulfill both characteristics that that the life within a womb is worth protecting, and also that there is like sufficient legal reason to justify its protection with punishment to the mother.
Yep, correct, correct. Okay, so for me personally, I'm a pretty open-minded person, and there's a lot of things that you can't really know for sure. I just want to go for the right thing. I want to be correct, and I want the lives of people to be better. But out of like all the things that I may not really know, there's probably only two things that I absolutely know, and that would be my own existence. Like, of course, I can think about my own existence, whether I exist or not, but the fact that I'm thinking shows that I do exist. And then that would be 2 plus 2 equals 4 on a base 10 system. So those are the things I definitely know. But one thing that would be very hard to change my mind on is equal rights. So, I mean, there's probably a few thousand people on here, a very, very diverse group, lots of different people, different colors, different sizes, different levels of intelligence. And I believe they all have equal rights. They all have the equal right to life. So, as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, okay, so what thing do they all have equally that gives them equal rights? And what would your answer be to that? Because I'm sure you agree as far as like equal rights go.
No, I think there are things people in my chat could do. No, I spend a lot of time with the people in my community. I'm pretty positive a lot of them don't deserve right to life. Um, yeah, I mean, if there are certain crimes people can commit, I think, or actions they can take which would warrant capital offense and retribution. That would probably be acceptable to me. If you're asking like, upon what basis do I believe they deserve a basic threshold of decency, it would probably be on their personhood, their cognitive ability to respond to their environment, and to creatively relate to the things around them.
All right, all right. So I would say it would be humanness. They're all equally human. Now, if we go to personhood, you would say, okay, they're all equally people because they all have personhood. So if we're talking about personhood itself, what would your characteristics be for personhood?
I think personhood, as far as I understand it, seems to be an emergent property of sufficiently intelligent creatures in interacting with their environment. Specifically, I think our ability to relate to entities beyond ourself, to conceptualize the idea of interactions with the things around us, the people around us. It's a really fundamental skill that most animals on this planet, at least most mammals, develop to varying extents, though obviously we have it far more, I think, than most other animals.
Right, right, right. Um, to that, I would say, of course, there are animals with it with a certain extent. Elephants would be a good one. Elephants are aware of their own existence and the existence of living things around them. They'll actually have funerals if a fellow elephant dies, and they'll even come back years later to the funeral spot and have like a memorial service. It's pretty interesting. But then you have the issue of like newborns and up to like 2 year olds who don't really have this high level of, I guess it would be rationality or self awareness. And I don't really see why we should grant personhood to animals, but not to our own young.
Oh, we don't have to either. I would probably be reasonable philosophically to deny personhood, generally speaking, to newborns.
Okay. Let me think. All right. So as far as like rationality, I agree that's basically what gives us our personhood, but it's the fact that we are a rational kind. We're a kind that can act morally because then I have to think of, what if there was like an alien or an angel? What if like Yoda came to Earth? I can't say,
I don't.
oh,
I
well,
mean,
he's
for
not a
me,
human, so he doesn't
morality
have
and our
rights.
species have nothing to do with it whatsoever. It has nothing to do with us being humans or even of us being particularly moral. In fact, very amoral individuals, I think, experience or relate to their environment pretty actively. Yeah, for me, it's just the ability to creatively engage with your environment. I think that I mean, for example, like a chimpanzee, I would think like a chimpanzee would probably have a more developed sense of personhood, if that's the term we're going to go with,
Hmm.
than a newborn human. Because it's variable. Obviously, as you get older, your brain develops, and the brain is the faculty through which we learn to relate to our environments. But something like an insect would probably, I mean, wouldn't even come close to that threshold at any age.
Right, right. All right. So I'm thinking, like, what if you had, do you think you could give like personhood to a computer?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the way maybe eventually it might be conceptually
Yeah,
possible.
like
Yeah,
hypothetically.
hypothetically, I don't know. Right now, our understanding of consciousness is metaphysical. We don't seem to have a way to quantify it beyond correlative elements like brain state or like neural activity. But the actual state of consciousness, that doesn't seem to be something we can codify right now. It might be possible in the future.
Right. Okay, so you would do that.
Maybe. I don't know. I would it's entirely possible that not even through a lack of not even through a lack of empirical availability, but just through the nature of how consciousness maps onto the brain, that it can't be transcribed into information the way computers can process. But I'm a materialist. I
Yeah,
believe that it
personally, I
emerges
don't
from
think it would
material.
happen, but
Oh no. Hold
mhm.
on. Oh, you can keep going. My apologies. My camera's been on the fritz lately and I don't know why.
Okay. So I'm thinking of what about people under general anesthesia? Because under general anesthesia, you don't have any subjective experience, you don't have any thoughts or anything like that. You're not interacting to the environment or responding to stimuli. Would you say that you lose personhood when you go under general anesthesia?
No, I don't think so. I think that when we're talking about personhood, we're sort of talking about like an aggregate of your current and your future abilities. When you're asleep, you're not really relating to your environment the same way you would normally. But I don't think it's the same as being a non-person. I think there's a quantifiable difference between an entity no longer having personhood, like through it experiencing brain death, and an entity having its capacity for personhood reduced temporarily through some sort of external circumstance, like sleep,
Mhm.
anesthesia, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so basically, to put it simply, you're saying that if they had previous personhood and they're going to have this personhood in the future, then at the moment they have personhood, right?
Yeah, it would be if they presently have a capacity for it, and they will have a capacity for it in the future. I feel like a gap in between then and in the future isn't necessarily the same as a complete dearth of personhood.
Okay, sure, sure. So hypothetically, like in a futuristic society, if you could like genetically engineer fetuses, if someone had like all these fetuses, they genetically engineered them to basically not really respond like a normal person or even like an animal. Like they're just robots basically mentally, and they just follow orders.
Mhm.
And then you have like a switch where you can just flip the switch and they all just go back to being, or not go back, but they all become like a regular human being. Would you say that like the owner of these human robot slaves should be allowed to keep them, or would you say that maybe the government or higher power should intervene and flip the switch?
I would say that if you have entities which are capable of and have God damn it. Sorry, my computer's on the camera. If you have entities which are both capable of and have an interest in self-determination and personhood, and if you are denying them that ability, then I would say that is generally speaking probably immoral. But I think that's a philosophical question that would probably require me to think a lot more about it.
Something like that, because it kind of gets you stuck where you're like, okay, I don't want to defend like this weird form of slavery, but also I don't want to say, oh yeah, because they're naturally capable to have these rational thoughts or interact with the environment, because then it would apply to a fetus.
Yeah, well, a fetus doesn't really have the cognitive abilities of a fetus are significantly lower than that of like a dog, like an adult dog. And we don't assign to me that the species is irrelevant. We don't assign personhood to the dog. Um, even though the dog is at its heightened state, it's at the greatest degree of personhood it can attain at whatever age it reaches adulthood. But for a fetus, it hasn't developed it yet. Now, obviously, you can have sensory experiences as a fetus in the womb. You know, you can hear music, you can hear like your mother's voice, you can bump
Oh
up
yeah,
against the
yeah.
inside of the womb, of course. But I don't know if these are necessarily experiences of personhood or if these are just the same reflexive sensory experiences even lower life forms can experience. Like we know cockroaches can see and respond to color differences and form paths and stuff like that.
Yeah, it kind of depends on like the stage of development, like what they're capable of. Actually, a cool thing I just read the other day is there's been multiple studies on this. Like the rate of a heartbeat of the mother reflect on like the type of music you like the speed of the music, which is kind of it's actually pretty interesting. But that starts at like 18 weeks, I think, when you're actually like hearing the heartbeat and are like kind of retaining that information.
Yeah.
As far as like earlier on, let me see here. So neurons of the cortical brain are established at 6 weeks, and so on. They continue to develop sensory receptors for pain at that's 7 weeks, and then 8 weeks the baby exhibits reflexive movements to like invasive procedures. So they are reacting to stimuli, and you could say at this point they are sentient
Hmm.
to an extent. Like you can't really say for sure if something is having subjective experiences, which is what sentience is. But it's a really good chance they are sentient. Like if you look at bivalves, for a while people said bivalves aren't sentient because they don't have a brain. But more recently, like studying them, they found like the what's called nerve ganglia. They basically have this nervous system, which it doesn't actually need a brain to have subjective experience. It's able to respond to its environment, and this nerve ganglia they have is actually pretty similar to what a fetus has at like 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't deny that fetuses have brain activity and that they can even have conscious experiences. Only that the degree to which they are capable of having those things would fall below any threshold I would assign for personhood. After all, my understanding of personhood is it has to arrive at a particular threshold before I can reasonably say it's worthy of the same protections we give,
Mm-hmm.
the like average adult humans. But if we're to accept the idea that a fetus has personhood, I must immediately then assign those exact same rights, roles, and responsibilities to and protections to a great many animals, which have a higher cognitive function during adulthood than humans do in the womb. And I think the practical implications of that decision would be absurd, to say the very, very least. So
Yeah.
since I do not to them, I do not to pre-birth humans either.
Yeah, that's not where I would draw the line. That's where I draw it as a rational thinking species. Because I don't want to just limit it to humans. Because hypothetically there could be aliens or whatever, something that could think rationally and could engage in morality and rights. But I think that just belonging to that kind is pretty important because you do have like the natural capacity to achieve these things. Because even if you're like not only younger but underdeveloped, like mentally challenged, because that age, around like 2, 3 years old, that's kind of extended if someone's like mentally challenged.
Yeah.
And
My main
I don't
concern,
really see any
I just feel
valid
like
reason.
we're arguing from intuition. Your essential argument is that we should give personhood to all human beings, um, because we're a species capable of rationality. And I'll justify that using X, Y, and Z. But those justifications are irrelevant if you're talking about something that would apply categorically to the entire species. You wouldn't have to justify the brain state of a fetus if you were just going to argue that by way of having the same DNA as us, it is given the same rights. It would be irrelevant. In fact, a baby could be brain dead in the womb, or a fetus could be brain dead in the womb. And by your logic, it wouldn't matter because they're still part of the species that eventually develops personhood. Since for me, the species, the categorization there is just not relevant. I can only assign it based on the individual capacity of an agent. And likewise, if a fetus was born with some sort of horrific cognitive or mental or physical disabilities that would preclude it from personhood, I think it should rightly be precluded from personhood. Like born brain dead, which is of course a thing that happens sometimes. Usually these babies are put down. They can't survive much on their own for very long anyway.
Yeah, if you're brain dead, then the rest of your body is going to be in the process of shutting down. With like brain dead patients, you can keep them alive for longer, but that's with like a natural thing, through machinery and stuff like that. But they are dead, so I wouldn't consider someone brain dead
Well,
person
their
for that
bodies are
reason.
alive, and it doesn't necessarily have to be brain death either. types of cognitive ailments that will not necessarily kill the child, but will keep it from achieving anything I would consider personhood. It would just be reflectively responding to environmental stimuli.
Would you say someone who's getting like dementia kind of like gradually loses their personhood?
Over a long enough period of time, dementia severely affects memory and personality. But I know that in its later stages, yeah, I would say yeah, and we agree with this, because if people are ailed severely enough, they're placed in the ward either of the state or of a family member who is given a great degree of autonomy over what's done with them. So at the very least, they've lost their right to legal autonomy, and sometimes, in some cases, we can affect what medications they take, what treatments they're subjected to. They lose their right to medical autonomy. In the most severe cases, we can pull the plug. So we agreed to an extent already that by way of lacking cognitive function, individuals can have rights taken from them.
Yeah, and personally, I would disagree. Like, I know that's like the legal system that's set, and that's what a lot of people would agree to. But as far as things like dementia, and then a lot of people would talk about like people who go into comas, even sometimes brain death. Doctors can get things wrong, and the person actually will recover. Like, there's like a whole website where you can find like hundreds of stories of someone who was declared brain dead, and they recovered. And obviously, they weren't literally brain dead if they did recover, but that's just like a failure of doctors. So I would say for reasons such as that, I would like people generally to be treated as a person continually
What if we
until
could
like you're
determine?
absolutely sure someone is like actually brain dead
What if we
or
could determine with 100% accuracy that that is not the case, that they are brain dead? We have the technology, we can do it 100% of the time. Um, would you then
yeah,
accept?
then yeah, if they're brain dead, then I consider that to be absolutely dead.
Okay,
Yeah.
then yeah, a fetus in the womb would never meet my qualifications for personhood. So I would then be comfortable with 100% consistency aborting a fetus.
Okay, so obviously, like at the very beginning, you talked about how personhood is pretty subjective. So, like, why is your certain position more valid than anyone else's? Because anyone can just, state their position and want that to be law, but you have to like show why your position is the most valid and the one that we should follow in our entire legal system.
Well, I think the weakness of your position is betrayed in the fact that you spent time talking about the cognitive abilities of fetuses, when your ultimate argument is that merely by way of being a human being, they should be afforded these rights and protections. Essentially, what that feels to me is you're trying to hedge your bets. The idea that all humans, by way of being human, deserve these protections is not as substantiated as saying that infants or fetuses are also in their own way capable. It shouldn't be relevant, at least to you.
Well, that's
Um,
that's more of a thing directed towards you. Like, I don't care if they have subjective experience, but they do. So that was kind of like direct at you and other people who might be listening. I know a lot of people, they say, "Oh, well, a personhood starts at subjective experience." If they do believe that, then they should believe it starts at like 6 weeks, 6, 7 weeks
6, 7 weeks in the womb or after birth.
in the womb. Yeah.
If their threshold is determined by cognitive ability, I don't think I've ever heard any left leaning person say that they're okay with abortion because babies don't have brain activity or
Oh,
fetuses.
I've
Sorry.
heard it a lot,
Oh, well,
and
that
I
might be
hear
a
I hear the
misconception on their
subjective
part.
experience argument a lot.
Well, they don't in the same way that we do. They don't relate to their environment because they don't really have an environment. They're kept in a womb. They can hear things from outside of it and they can kick against the stomach, but they aren't really a product of the world in any meaningful way. They're still very much a parasite in a very literal sense on their mother. Um, yeah. I mean, with regards to personhood, obviously, and this is one of the things I bristle with when it comes to abortion arguments, the personhood argument is an unsolved philosophical discussion. You can only argue in matters of consistency, not in matters of empirical validity. But all the same, that's my argument for personhood. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
whatever a fetus is, it certainly does not meet those characteristics. Young
yeah.
babies also would often not meet those characteristics, but you can't reasonably know whether a 12-month-old, 18-month-old, 2-year-old is. So it's usually best to, I think, hedge your bets and keep the abortions before the birth when there's no chance of passing personhood.
Yeah, I think my best argument was probably the slavery one, which I didn't necessarily get a response to that one. So that's kind of where I am right now. I don't know if there's really much for me to continue on personhood if I don't get an answer to that.
Yeah, well, if you repeat the question, I'm happy. I thought I responded to it, but if not, I'd be happy to
Yeah, you just
rephrase.
said like it might take you a while to think about it, and that the question is,
Yeah, give me the premise again.
in a futuristic world, if you could basically genetically engineer or put a freeze on a part of the brain or something and stop these fetuses from ever developing this response to stimuli, subjective experience, rationality, et cetera, et cetera. You know, anything that you presented as a personhood,
Mm-hmm.
and basically made them robots and had them as slaves. If there was a switch to just flip them and turn them back, and or not back, but turn them into a regular human being who has all these aspects of personhood, do you think it's the government's responsibility to treat them as persons and flip the switch to get them out of slavery, or do you think you have to respect the rights of the owner of the slaves?
Well, I don't care much for the rights of property owners in any context. Yeah, this is kind of like the servitor question because it doesn't have to be humans; it can be robots as well. Um, because it wouldn't make a
I mean,
difference
I
to me.
would say it's exactly, yeah. I would say it doesn't really make a difference if you flip the robots and they develop the um, necessary characteristics of personhood. Then I would say it's kind of the same situation.
If an entity does not have any desire for personhood, but that does have the capacity for personhood, I don't think you can reasonably make the claim that you must then invest in them that capacity. Because then we're talking about the degree to which you must exert effort to give them that sentience, to give them that personhood. So, say, for example, you could flip a switch to turn a slave into a man, whatever, using poetic language there. Fine, great. You'd want to switch it into a man. Well, if it was just fine being a slave, if it had no desires or interests whatsoever in any direction, as a matter of fact, as a slave, then the decision to turn it to a man would essentially be the same decision as to produce a child as a birth, the way we do. We spontaneously create consciousness where none existed previously. And I don't think I could ever hold a person accountable for not having birth. So yeah, essentially, it would come down to the extent to which the servitor um, would be capable of even like desiring or understanding consciousness. If it has in any capacity whatsoever, feelings, thoughts, preferences, desires, anything even remotely related to human sentience, then yes, I would say that that in that case there would be a responsibility to grant them whatever autonomy they desire.
Yeah, I would just fundamentally disagree. I would just say if someone has the capacity for these characteristics and for rational thought, in my case, that would be the capacity for rational thought and acting ethically. I would say that they do have rights, so you should flip the switch and take them out of slavery. Because even if they don't have the will at the moment, it's not their fault that they don't have the will. It's either in the case of the fetus, it's because of time, and in the case of the slaves, it's because someone imposed their own will on them. And I would say in both cases, it's much more ethical to grant them personhood in
Do
the
you think
beginning.
people should be do you think people should be obligated to birth children
What would you mean by that
as
specifically?
opposed to not? Like you have to fuck and produce a child and raise it. Do you think people are obligated to do that? That it's immoral to not do those things?
I wouldn't say it's immoral to not have a child. No.
Okay, I was just curious. Um, because in both instances, you're making it's a matter of personal decision as to whether or not you're willing to commit to bring a consciousness into existence. Whether you flip a switch from a servitor to a man, or go through a 9-month process of birthing a child. In both cases, it's effort expended to produce a willful consciousness.
Yeah. I would say because there's not like an actual individual being there at this time with that natural capacity. Like, I mean, beforehand you have like the sperm, which the sperm doesn't develop any further. It's just a sperm and it dies a sperm and it carries information. So there is really no being there and nothing with that natural capacity to achieve rational thought.
Okay, well,
So yeah, I
r-
mean, I would just say it's
right,
a
but the
fundamental
slave
disagreement.
wouldn't either, right? If the slave is completely subjugated, in the sense that it has no consciousness, no free will, no free thought, no emotions, nothing, no preferences, um, would the servitor or the slave, whatever, would it not be um, just as much void in an ethical sense as an unborn child?
I wouldn't say so because wait, are you saying as an unborn child?
As a
Yeah, I would
non-existent child.
no because there is an individual being there, and it does possess the capabilities to have these rational thoughts or whatever.
Well, then it's just a matter of reducibility because I have sperm in my balls, and there are people around me who have eggs in them. It's just a matter of how much work. What if it was a servitor, but um, in order to grant it personhood, you would have to undergo a lengthy mechanical procedure. But the parts aren't all on the servitor. You have to get them from elsewhere in the shop. It's, what I'm saying is like at this point, it's a problem of reducibility. It's how much effort exactly justify or is morally obligatory with regards to endowing a non-conscious entity with consciousness if the possibility is there.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. I would say it starts when it is an individual living organism that possesses these capabilities of having rational thought.
What is a
So
individual living organism?
if these parts like I don't know, if they're just like these cells and just these cells alone, and then you put cells together, and then of course cells build up into an organism. The cells themselves don't have rights, but the organism does because that's when it's an actual individual
Sure, but is a fetus not an organ of the mother?
of the mother. What do you mean by that?
Well, a fetus is by no means autonomous individual entity. It's created from the materials and resources inside the inside the womb, much as an organ would be produced, or a kidney stone. It's completely biologically dependent on the womb of the mother. So I'd say in that argument, if we're talking about the irreducibility relies on an entity being singularly capable of achieving consciousness, then a fetus certainly doesn't have that. You extract a fetus from the womb and it plops onto the ground, and it won't be experiencing anything even close to a conscious experience soon.
I mean, if you don't do anything to the fetus, it's going to develop and it's going to have these rational thoughts eventually. I mean, probably it will most likely have these rational thoughts. You can't make an absolute claim that it will, but generally, that's what happens.
Well, with intervention, because it needs the resources of the mother.
Yeah, I mean, just like you're dependent on food and other stuff, you're dependent on the animals and the plants you eat. I don't necessarily see that as like a big distinction, really.
Well, there's a pretty big difference between the dependence I have on whatever food I buy at the grocery store and the dependence a fetus has on the resources provided to it through the umbilical cord.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a child has uh, whoever is the guardian or de facto guardian of a child, they are responsible for providing food and shelter for them. And if in this particular case the food and shelter has to be in the womb, then yeah, I mean, I would say that she's responsible for that.
I see. So do you think that if a mother eats poorly and this causes a miscarriage, that would be the same as murder?
Not necessarily, because I mean, then you have to compare it, right? You can do like try a toddler. I think it's called the toddler argument. So you just take whichever thought experiment or whatever the person presented and then apply it to a toddler. So if the mother ate something bad and it somehow accidentally killed a toddler, and I mean, depending on the situation, there would have to be like a lot more information given on the situation, but maybe she could be responsible for some sort of manslaughter, being negligent. And right now we already punish parents for negligence to their children.
So they're
If,
born children,
maybe
of
if
course.
she, yeah, but personally I don't see a difference. So I'm talking about from like my point of view. Yeah, so
Do you
I wouldn't
really?
say murder,
I have to ask,
but
do you really not see a difference legally and philosophically between a born child who can tie their own shoes, memorize the names of the people around them, go to school, and a passingly sapient organ attached to the inside of a body that has not yet breathed air? I mean, I understand, of course, they're the same species, but I feel like in many senses, these are very distinct things.
I mean, I see difference between you and a 2-year-old, right? I mean, I see difference between different levels of development, but overall, I think everyone has the same basic rights, the same right to life. So, I mean, if you're saying, do I see any difference? Like, of course I see a difference, but not in every way.
All right. But in what capacity then, if we're to switch more to legal arguments, is there any justification for prosecuting people based on their decision to consume food or alcohol? Now, obviously, you can consume alcohol and then drive a car, and that's illegal for its own reasons. But when it comes to an individual's right to singularly consume what they want and do what they want with their own bodily autonomy, um, there is, to my knowledge, essentially no legal precedent um, for denying a person
Well, yeah,
those
yeah, yeah, yeah.
affects.
We can go here. I have actually 2 arguments here that I can use. So number one would be another thought experiment. So let's say there was this pill, and when you take this pill, at first it's fine, but eventually this pill will give off a radiation that will harm those around you. Now, I absolutely, I strongly believe in body rights. You shouldn't impose things on people's bodies for the most part. People should be able to consume what they want. But in this case, you're taking something that is going to at least eventually directly harm someone else. So I would say that should be illegal for someone to take that pill. Even though, if they want to take weed or cocaine, whatever, fine, you can do that if you're just doing it to yourself. Okay, I don't care. But if you're taking something that is going to harm someone else, then I think that's kind of where I have to draw the line.
Well, someone else. Legally, we don't assign those same rights and protections to fetuses. So any
Yeah,
argument.
I mean, it doesn't care what we assign right now. I'm talking about, like when you went to the legal argument, this kind of you kind of have to assume that they have these legal rights, right? Because you're
Well, no,
talking
because
about
that
how would I
presupposes the
impose the
validity
laws?
of your argument. I don't think they have the same legal rights.
You don't have to think my argument is valid. You don't have to think that they're persons. But when you go to the talking about law or talking about body autonomy, just for like the sake of argument, you kind of have to assume that they're persons. Or then you're just going to keep going back to the personhood debate.
Well, sure, but yeah, because I think the personhood debate is much more essential than the bodily autonomy debate. But when it comes to your hypothetical, you take like a pill that emits radiation that damages the people around you or whatever. I don't even know if that would be illegal in America. Right now, I mean, you can smoke in America. Secondhand smoke kills a lot of people. And
I would be. I'm against smoking, imposing your smoking on someone else. If you want to go smoke in private, but if you're like smoking in your home, and that's actually that's a great argument for me. Actually, if you're smoking in your home and you're killing your kids, like that's kind of messed up. My dad has lung problems because his parents smoked all the time. Like that's something that can affect someone throughout their whole life. I think kind of to a certain extent, secondhand smoking should be
it is messed
something
up,
that's
but it's
restricted.
not illegal.
I think it should be. Yeah, I mean
Sure,
it's
but
not right now.
well, we're talking about legal precedent when we're talking about the argument for bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that are illegal right now. If we're just talking about the laws right now, then there's not really any argument to be had because We can't, change the laws right now. We're going to be talking
Well,
hypothetical
sure.
laws.
I'm just saying that right now our laws on abortion are in line, generally speaking, with our laws on the subject of bodily autonomy. And in order for us to change those laws, we would have to, it wouldn't just be abortion, we would have to massively shift our social understanding of the relative rights of the individual. It's interesting you're arguing against individual rights here as a minarchist. The rights of the individual against sort of the collective responsibility to society.
I mean, I don't think killing someone is an individual right, really, but okay, I can argue from that point too, because if a woman,
then I'll ask you the hypothetical, if I may. Okay, if you
okay, sure.
if you through some accident have it such that you must have your body chained to another for 9 months, and that if you pull away from that, that person dies. Do you believe the decision to live autonomously for those 9 months rather than to be chained to them? Do you think this is murder? Do you think this is killing this person?
Well, we kind of have to break this down a bit, because I don't think this is quite a good equivalence to pregnancy. Because first of all, I didn't. You said what, like an accident, like this isn't really something I meant to do or whatever. Something I did that caused this. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't think it's relevant one way or another. Even if you
Like,
deliberately did a thing that led to you being chained to another. People have sex,
okay,
of course.
okay. Do I have the right to stab them?
To stab them? No, because they have
Yeah.
personhood.
I mean, like if I'm assuming from my position that the fetus is a person, then I don't think they have the right to stab the fetus
Well, do you have a right to
or kill the
disconnect your
fetus.
body from whatever tubes are keeping them alive?
In that case, I would say we have to kind of do a more direct comparison. So I have like a few examples of my own, if you don't mind, few thought experiments.
Sure, but do you have an
Uh,
answer for that? If you have tubes connecting your blood to the blood of somebody on dialysis or something, they need you for a long time to survive. They need your clean blood. Would you consider it murder or even manslaughter to decline to say no, I do not want to do this?
no, I don't. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I don't think that's a very good direct comparison. So I have two different things I could give. The first one, it kind of is about the obligation someone has, and that would be, if you had like a machine in your house and you can go to it and push a button, and it might give you like a pleasurable experience, or maybe it gives you candy, whatever. It's a great machine. You go push it anytime you want, but you know that there is a chance that sometime a baby can pop out of that machine. And one day you go and press it, you get your candy or whatever, and then a baby comes out. I don't think you can just go, oh well, I didn't want this baby. I just wanted the candy, right?
Well,
I
we're
mean, I
not
knew the baby
talking
would
about
appear,
aborting
but I don't want
babies.
the
We're
candy.
talking about
So,
aborting fetuses.
I mean, I think they're equivalent. So I'm
Okay.
talking from
Well,
my
right.
perspective,
But
right?
you can't legally we can't equivocate these things because we're talking about bodily autonomy. So obviously, if a baby is not attached to your body, their
Well,
autonomy has nothing to do with
there's
your
no
bodily.
sense. Then there's no sense to your thought experiment, because you're talking about an adult. Like, at least in mine,
Oh no,
I'm talking like more direct. I
I'll
mean,
talk. I can talk about a fetus, but that makes my argument stronger. If my body is hooked up, like my tubes running my blood to a little baby, like somehow they've grafted a fallopian tube from the baby's belly button onto me or something. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd cut that shit right the fuck off. I'm not having a fucking fetus dangling from me for 9 months. Absolutely.
okay, I mean, can you stab the fetus then?
But I stabbed the fetus.
Yep.
Um, I suppose, yeah. If their existence is entirely contingent upon their attachment to me, I mean, I don't know why I would. I mean, it seems kind of unnecessary.
Okay, I mean, how does it come to be attached to you?
Uh, wait,
I
I
mean,
mean,
do you want to
let's say
do
I
like this?
fucked a really weird succubus and I woke up like that.
I mean, we can kind of add it to my little thought experiment. So you press the button, and then the fetus is, or the baby, whatever, the fetus is attached to you. Then I think, you don't just go, oh, take out a pair of scissors, cut it, and then leave it to die, or just like bash its head up against the wall. Like you've created that being
I would
that's now
try to be
helpless,
dignified about it.
and
You
it's
know, I
a
would, I would try to like, I
I
don't
don't mean
know how you
abortion, but
can.
usually not very dignified. So
Well, no, you can. I mean, you're trying to appeal like you stab or you bash it. No, I mean, I don't think I have a legal obligation or a moral obligation to commit my body as an incubus or as an incubating device to this creature for 9 months. I don't think I have that moral or legal responsibility.
I mean, I think as a man, like we're basically saying if a man gets pregnant, this is just like the like exactly the same as
It is
pregnancy.
exactly the
So
same.
it's not really much of a thought experiment.
Yeah,
But I
but
mean, if a man could get pregnant, I'd say the same thing that the fetus still has the rights.
yeah, one thing that we're missing out on in this whole discussion is the fact that the decision to carry a fetus to term has enormous cost to the person holding it. Right now, when we phrase this like, oh, well, you press a button that gives you candy and sometimes it gives you a baby, and then you have the baby and you can kill the baby or not, well, fine. But the consequences of an unwanted child being carried to term are enormous for the person carrying it in a wide variety of ways. So, do I think it's great to cut off a fetus from life support? Like, do I think this is a morally good or even morally neutral action in a vacuum? Probably not. It's still I mean, I believe in vegan ethics. Hypothetically, I don't think it's good to like stomp on a mouse. I don't think mice have personhood. Well, maybe I don't know, something like that. But at the same time, it wouldn't be like a fantastic thing. But we're weighing it against another option, which is carrying this fetus to term, which is in my case, if unwanted, far more unethical than the act of taking this little fetus off life support.
I would just go back to compare it to a toddler. If having a toddler brings you a lot of mental stress, even physical stress, I don't think that necessarily gives you the validity to kill it.
I'll tell you this: if we didn't give people the legal option to abort their children or to give their children away for adoption, I don't know how I would feel about people committing acts of violence against their toddlers. If you have literally no choice in it, it's entirely conceivable that you could make a moral argument. But we do have the option to have abortions, and we do have the option to give away for adoption children that are already born. The only option for fetuses that are still in the womb is abortion.
Right. So if you see like a newborn as less of a person than like some animals, like types of animals you might eat, why can you not eat a newborn?
Why couldn't I not eat a newborn? I don't
Yeah.
think you should eat animals.
I mean, you do eat animals, right? Like from what I've heard, I've watched a lot of your videos, and I know you kind of had like the vegan ethics thing going on.
Hmm.
But last I heard, you still do eat meat.
Yeah. And you know what? If they had legal baby meat on the shelves, I would make the exact same arguments for that I would for non-human baby meat, which is this is unethical as fuck, but as long as every other goddamn thing on this shelf was produced through the suffering and enslavement of human beings, in this case very literally, um, then fuck it. No ethical consumption. That'd be my argument, yeah. But it'd be bad. I mean, I wouldn't like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would make an argument defending eating babies, but I mean, to each their own.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, because we can make like intuitive moral arguments for it, but if we're talking about just emotional capacity, a fully grown pig is significantly more intelligent than a human like 1 year old baby is. But you would eat a pig any day. I fail to see a meaningful difference between these things.
Yeah, I mean, a pig isn't a rational kind.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm
wait,
kind of thinking
what
like
does
all
that
the
what does that
rest of the
mean?
like they're never going to have that ability to interact ethically or to think rationally,
But
and that's kind of
they do. Cows, pigs, other animals like that, they form family dynamics, they form social bonds with those around them. They can actively choose to help those who are struggling, even those of different species, sometimes in return for favors, and sometimes crows do this. You know, you can trade with crows. If you have shinies for them, then they can bring you things they see you using, like sometimes cigarettes. I mean, I would by any meaningful like definition, I think these animals are worthy of a great deal of moral consideration.
I mean, I would agree that to a certain extent deserve moral consideration. I'm not a big fan of like imposing pain on something that can feel pain. Even though I eat meat, I would like them to go through as little pain as possible, and to not just waste and kill tons and tons of animals. But overall, like they're still not a rational kind that can really
I've
like. I mean,
never seen a
you're
legal or
saying like they
philosophical
can kind
text
of
use this term, rational kind. I don't know. I don't think being a member of a particular species grants you by default some sort of irretractable moral consideration. And you agree with that because you acknowledge that if a machine could determine with perfect accuracy whether a person was brain dead, you would be fine with them being killed. A brain dead human is still a human.
Well, I mean, they're dead, so
They're
they're
brain
not
dead.
being killed.
Their bodies could go on for years afterwards.
Yeah, if they're supported by like machinery and stuff. But
Well, wait, are you saying that being supported by a foreign entity voids the right to life an otherwise unperson might have?
no, because in this case, you're just keeping alive certain cells. You're not keeping alive an actual being. So yeah, it's a bit of a straw man.
No, it's not. In both cases, you're keeping alive, you're facilitating the growth of and the development of a physical body that can't survive outside the chamber it's been placed in.
Yeah, I mean, even if I grant you this position, like that's actually a good comparison. All I have to say is, if someone's brain dead, they're not actually going to eventually have rational thoughts or be capable of living or anything like that, and a fetus would. So I mean, that's just like an easy thing for me to deal with.
So, okay, so you believe there are conditions by which the personhood of a human being can be voided based on the absolute knowledge that they have lost their brain function and will not have it again in the future?
Yeah. If they've lost their brain function, then yeah, because then they would be brain dead, and I consider that dead.
Okay. So do you have so you then believe that any future capacity for rational thought thus entails entitlement to the protections given to all humans?
Uh, I guess I would say so. It depends on like what you mean specifically by that.
This seems like an argument in favor of compelled birth to me. That if regardless of current cognitive ability, so long as you can possess future cognitive ability, we have a moral obligation to lend our bodily resources towards the achievement of that future cognitive ability. This is a defense of compelled birth.
I wouldn't say that. I'm talking about like an actual being. I'm not talking about like cells that exist on their own and kind of formulate these pieces of information that then will become an individual being.
How do you define individual being?
Like probably what I said earlier, like an organism.
But a zygote is not a fetus.
Yeah, I mean, a zygote comes before the fetus. Yeah,
and a sperm and an
that's
egg
still an organism.
Come before the zygote.
Yeah, before being an organism.
They are both
at conception,
organisms.
It becomes an organism.
They're both organisms beforehand.
A sperm is a single-celled organism, which it's not quite the same as an organism. Like it has the word organism.
It is absolutely a sperm cell is
organism.
unquestionably an organism, and an egg even is absolutely. They both absolutely meet that criteria.
But the sperm doesn't further develop. The sperm is just that.
Yeah, it
like
does.
I mean, I could say
the sperm, like the zygote, just needs a little bit of help from an outside source.
I think you just kind of have to like look into how conception happens, because that's not how it happens.
I appreciate your condescension. So a zygote can only develop into a fetus by having resources from an external source lent to it. Likewise, an egg can only become a zygote by having external resources in the form of half of the genetic code provided by a sperm cell provided to it. So in both cases, this distinction of like individual, like an individual organism is meaningless when you're defending the rights of something that isn't an individual organism. A fetus isn't an individual organism. It's an organ. It's a parasite. It's completely dependent biologically on the resources provided to it by the mother.
I mean, if we're getting down to semantics, then like all of that would be incorrect because like biologically they are organisms, and biologically they're not parasites because a parasite has to be of another species, and a parasite takes from a host at their expense and doesn't give anything back.
Do you not wait? What does a fetus give back?
Oh, a fetus, they'll actually like give stem cells that heal the mother's heart because pregnancy actually can harm the mother's heart, and the stem cells will actually
and
help
leeches
heal it.
provide a salivatic enzyme that reduces pain receptors in the area. No, it's a fetus takes from the womb. It takes from the mother as well.
Like by definition, parasite has to be of another species. And in this case, the fetus isn't actually like taking anything; it's being given stuff. It's not like actively taking.
Wait, what does that mean? It grows in the interior cell lining of the. No, yes, it does. It's leaches resources from the inside of the womb. It literally drains the life from pregnant women. Will often be like unhealthy. They can become anemic. They can grow weak because they have to eat more. Their resources, like a tapeworm, are being drained.
The woman's body itself is giving the resources.
What do you
like? I mean, she's not making like I mean, you don't make your heart beat, right? It just beats.
Weren't
it's an
you just accusing
involuntary
me
thing.
of semantics earlier? Though it doesn't matter because the woman has no choice in the matter. It's not like the woman is like, okay, it is time for me to dedicate my bodily resources. Biologically,
I mean,
the presence
that's what
of
I
a
was
fetus.
just saying. Like, it's an involuntary act, but her body is still giving to the fetus. And then even if I granted you for some reason that it is taking, then it's still not a parasite because a parasite has to be of another species.
Parasitism is a form of parasitism done within the same species. There are parasites that feast on their own species.
I mean, if you want to go by like the literal definition of parasite,
you can't accuse me of you can't say, well, technically it's not because of this, and then I provide example of a parasite that's of the same species. You could be like, well, if you want to be hyper specific, like, come on, no, it's a parasite.
Well,
yeah.
What is that? What is that specifically? Like the whatever you said.
Kleptoparasitism.
Yeah.
A form of feeding in which one animal takes prey or another food that was caught, collected, or otherwise prepared by another animal, including stored food. Like the food that the mother eats.
I don't know if that really falls under that. I don't know.
Oh, I mean
I don't like. Does it really even matter?
I don't know.
I don't see how this is really.
Well, you fought me on the parasite thing.
Semantics.
When I said parasite, I was using a rhetorical flourish to indicate that it was in a foreign body that was present there, not necessarily by the will of the mother, that was sapping resources.
I recognize it's in a foreign body.
Right, of course. But then you argued the semantics of parasitism, so I look up, and so it's more complicated always, of course. Yeah, at any rate, what bothers me about
in that case, like a newborn is a parasite if it feeds if it breastfeeds.
Well, except that's always consensual. There's not a biological interaction that forces the two together. The mother has to like raise them to the breast, whereas you have no choice whatsoever with a fetus unless you abort them.
Well, I was talking about like your definition of parasite.
Sure. The point again, I used parasite as rhetorical flourish. It does in some contexts meet the definition. But the point that I'm trying to get at is like a parasite, it is a foreign body that invades your body, that drains tremendous amounts of resources from you, sets up shop, and it provides, perhaps some very, very little benefit in return for what it takes from you. And that having it in your body can often be quite damaging and detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, I know how pregnancy works. I don't even remember how we got onto this, to be honest with you.
Well, I was making the point that your argument is in favor of forced birth, because you're saying we should grant moral consideration to human beings by way of them being human because of their future cognitive ability. which kind of means every child we're not having is a potential conscious being that we are denying their God-given right to physical existence.
See, as when you're talking about like the sperm and stuff, this isn't a human being. So I'm talking about like an actual being, an actual kind that is capable of rational thought or whatever. And they don't even have to like actually achieve rational thought. Just the fact that they are the type of animal that can.
Yeah, but you're
if someone has like brain issues and they never actually develop these abilities, I don't think they necessarily forfeit their rights.
But you said they do if they're brain dead, provably.
Yeah, if they're brain dead, because I consider that to be a dead.
But they're
like
still human. Why should a brain dead human be taken off the plug? They're still human. They're alive. Their heart's pumping. Their cells are alive. They're not dead.
Well, again, I consider a brain dead person to be dead.
Wait, what? They're a human, and their bodies are alive.
Like even like medically, they consider a brain dead person to be dead.
Not medical. The medical brain death isn't the same thing as the death of the organism.
I consider this. I still consider it to be death. Like I don't. They're not like this actual living, functioning organism. There's still they are. Going on.
Billions of cells in their body that are carrying ATP and the mitochondria.
Yeah, but I mean, even when you die, like all the way, there's still like living cells for a certain period that are
the body is alive.
Performing actions.
The damage is just to the brain. The brain can't have higher thoughts, but the brain is still alive enough to manage the automatic processes of the body. They can have sensory experiences too. People who are brain dead to varying extents can still feel people touch them or hear noises or voices. They can't recognize it, no higher thoughts, but they can experience these, environmental stimuli.
I don't know, man. The whole brain dead thing. I hate people like always try to bring it up, but like fundamentally, like when you are brain dead, you are like you've lost all natural capacity for rational thought. Like there's no actual capacity for rational thought at all, because you're not currently having it, and you're never going to have it. You cannot develop it in any way. When you're like an underdeveloped person, you may not actually achieve it, but still as a functioning person or a functioning human being, you still have that natural capacity. Let me try to give you like a better, like a good analogy of what I'm talking about, because some people don't really get the whole natural capacity thing. Like as a human, it's in our natural capacity to like walk on two legs or to speak a language. But there's some people who can't do either of those things, but as a human being, they have the natural capacity to do so. But once you die, either completely physically or you're brain dead, then all of that is gone. Like either one of those things are gone.
I mean, if you want to define the boundaries of justified personhood as a single autonomous entity, ignoring the fact that there were autonomous entities that went into its creation, and ignoring the fact that it's dependent on the cell wall of the mother to survive, and then say it deserves personhood because it's a human and the species in general deserves personhood, but then say that personhood can be voided in brain damage in the future, the only like consistent definition you would have to have for that is the only valid criteria for the relationship between personhood and brain activity would be future brain activity, which means that your assignment of rights and responsibilities to and privileges to fetuses are predicated only on the fact that in the future they have the possibility of achieving a brain state which you believe meets the qualifications that you would assign to humanity. So I have one follow-up question, one last one. I think maybe we'll get to the end of this. Okay, let's say there's an extinction level event coming. Let's say that a meteor is going to hit a town in 10, 15 minutes, okay? And
Hmm.
everyone in that town is going to die. And for reasons known only to her, some mother decides to bludgeon to death her 2-year-old child. Do you think this is a morally neutral action, considering the fact that this child is guaranteed to have no possibility of having a conscious experience which would meet the qualifications for a rational human being in the future?
I would say no, because I'm talking about their natural capacity. So,
But that
um,
child has no natural capacity whatsoever. They're going to die soon.
well, no, 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 no. You're talking about like future potential. Future potential isn't the same as natural capacity.
So it's literally just a priori with no justification. It's just because they're humans, unless they're brain dead.
I'm saying like you have rights because we have equal rights because we are equally human, and then we have humans are special because humans are a rational kind.
I don't recognize this distinction. There are animals that are individually more rational than individual human beings. There are chimpanzees more intelligent than young human beings.
Yeah, and then we have to get to the whole thing, which I think is kind of a crazy conclusions that you come to, that we can potentially eat babies, and then you kind of lose
Wait,
like
you
all
think we can eat
obligation that
pigs?
parents have. Yeah, I'm fine
Yeah.
with eating a pig.
Yeah,
I
what the
don't see it
fuck?
as the same as eating a baby.
Wait, justify it. Why?
Um, I think. Well, I mean, you shouldn't eat a. You should first of all kill another human being that, unless they're like attacking you or whatever.
Same with the pig?
Another rational kind, someone who has personhood. I don't consider a pig to have personhood. As human beings, we are.
You're presupposing it. You're saying like, well, you shouldn't do it with humans because they're humans, and you can do it with pigs because they're pigs. Why? What underlying characteristics justify this unequal treatment? Because pigs are smarter than human babies. Pigs are intelligent, capable of forming emotional bonds, rational. We're only talking about the individual here. Unless you legitimate unless just the entire a priori assumption that like all rights granted to humans are only because they're humans and there's no like deeper underlying level, which is like a near religious justification for human rights as far as I'm concerned, which I do not accept.
I mean, my final justification for human rights would be religious, but I don't like to argue from that viewpoint. I want to argue from a secular viewpoint because, I mean, obviously, if I'm arguing for someone that's not religious or of a different religion, then there's really no point. So, I mean, that does make it tough sometimes. But then, like, then I have to think, like, where do rights come from? There's like a couple of different places where you can say rights comes from. Some people say it's like the government, and then you can go to like natural rights, which there's a few different like theories on natural rights that people like Aristotle and Augustus, and there's like the divine revelation, which would be the religious one fundamentally, and then there would be the experience, which is kind of like the golden rule sort of thing. Like the type of like pain and things that you don't want to go through, so you kind of like grant other people those rights. And then there would be the rationality or the reasoning thing for a human right. So you kind of reason out what would be human rights, and so like it's kind of a natural response to be like, yeah, well, yeah, we don't kill people, we don't kill other people.
Well,
So that would
it's
be
all a matter of
reasoning it out.
right. It's all a matter of I'm a utilitarian myself. I'm a utilitarian. Um,
Mhm.
so to me, the moral worth or actions are generally a product of their consequences. And for me, at least personally, the rights a creature deserves are proportional to the their personhood, the degree to which they can relate to their environment, the emotional and intellectual, capacity they have for experiential difference, which obviously are highly subjective. So we have to speak in generalities. I think that we can afford general protections to humans. I think we should afford general protections to most animals. Probably not insects. That seems like it might get a little bit wacky. But whatever qualifications I assign for the validity of personhood just would not apply to a fetus. And I think even if they did, to an extent, the harm done to a person who doesn't want to carry a fetus to term being forced to is significantly greater than the harm of terminating a life before it's able to have any meaningful experiences.
Yeah, when you get to like your whole thing on personhood, I don't see like any validity in granting like certain people like less personhood, because under your thing, I think like
You
people with
already
less
have.
intelligence, people who are like experiencing the world less, then they would have less personhood.
You already have, though. You've said people who are brain dead have their personhood revoked.
Yeah, a dead person.
No, a brain dead person.
I still consider those to be the same thing.
You realize that a brain dead person has more brain activity than a zygote, right?
Uh, at a certain point, maybe. I mean, all I have to do is say, yeah. I mean, once there's no brain activity, then you can pull the plug. I mean, this is
But a
kind of like
zygote has no brain activity because it doesn't have a brain.
they have well, yeah, but they have the natural capacity for a brain.
But no,
They have
I
the
can't.
natural
Okay, all
capacity
right.
to have these rational
I feel
thoughts.
like your justifications for personhood are relying on like a set of axiomatic definitions that I can't engage with. If you think it's literally just like because they're human beings, like I would be really interested in wondering like what if we start altering human gene code? What happens? Because the thing is, your argument here is irreducible. If we have any changes whatsoever in the human biological order, such as like stem cell changes in our gene code, what exactly defines a human being? What if there are robots with sentience? Any of that, all of your definitions like crumble. They're very, very, very reliant on a person's intuitive belief that humans are special, which I reject. But in this specific context, if that is the definition of personhood you want to run with, then there's that. Of course, this doesn't even begin to speak of the legal precedent regarding bodily autonomy, and even then, like the consequential harm done by terminating a fetus as opposed to carrying a fetus to term. But that's why abortion debates generally are supervised by moderators and not let to run on their own for an hour and 15 minutes, I guess.
Yeah. Abortion abuse can go on for quite a while. Well, I maybe I will go soon. I don't know how long you wanted me to stay here and whatnot.
I
But
can normally
I
go
could.
forever. I'm just irritated because this fucking camera died 10 minutes in. After I'm done with this, I'll probably run out to
Yeah.
like a fucking Best Buy or something and get another Sony 6100 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why this one's fucking up so much. Anyway, yeah, let me think. What did we Okay, wait, here, hold on. Wait, hold on. I have an idea. Let's talk pragmatism, okay? So, a ton of babies are aborted every year in the US. If all these babies were brought to term in 2 years, our social services, our orphanages, everything would be completely overfilled. There would be a tidal wave of unwanted babies, of which there's a much higher likelihood of them being mistreated in poor environments, poor outcomes, so on and so forth. It seems like the practical outcome of the illegalization of abortion is very, very bad every time it's tried. Not only does it hurt society, usually the people who want abortions will just do them anyway, but more dangerous. So it's a very difficult thing to stop unless you want to get really Orwellian and start opening up investigations on every miscarriage that happens,
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I would start with so basically that's the argument of like, like the future, the baby's future, fetus's future. Uh Okay, let me give you this story. So, or consider this situation. So you have a father suffering from syphilis. Is that how you say it?
Syphilis.
Syphilis. Syphilis, yeah. And then his wife has tuberculosis, and then she finds out she's pregnant with her fifth child. And of her current children, the first is blind, the second died, the third is deaf, and the fourth also has tuberculosis. I mean, abortion would seem kind of like a good option in that circumstance to some people.
Yeah, I would say
But like,
so.
imagine if like the mother and father had a crystal ball, they could see in the future and find out that their son, if born, would grow up to bad circumstances and would endure like serious depression and will like deeply love someone who doesn't return the love and will eventually become deaf and wait, hold on one second. Eventually become entirely deaf, and which would kind of mess up his whole career as a musician. That circumstance, that's Ludwig von Beethoven. So you can come up with all these circumstances, like all these bad things that would happen. That doesn't necessarily mean that this person's life overall would be a
Well,
terrible life,
what?
because you can't make the absolute claim that it will.
What?
Because I mean, like all the things I just listed are pretty horrible, and that's literally Beethoven's
Yeah.
life.
So a couple of things. First of all, the ex-aborted child could grow up to be blank is and always has been a meaningless argument. They could grow up to be, I don't know, Trump. They could grow up to be Hitler. It doesn't matter. They could go in any direction. You know, it's meaningless. Secondly, what you argued against right there was eugenics. What you argued against essentially was the idea of terminating a pregnancy because you felt that it would possess certain undesirable genetic or social conditions. And I'm not a eugenicist, so I agree with your argument. I'm not making an
Yeah, I hate
argument.
eugenics. It sucks.
Yeah, I'm not making an argument for or against aborting based on the individual preferences of people who want to commit those abortions. I'm just saying that the consequences of making abortion illegal broadly as a society, not for individual parents or individual children, but broadly as a society, seems like it would make things a lot worse. Um,
I mean, I think there's like other steps you have to take along with banning abortion. We may like differ on what those steps might be, but I want steps to be taken for life to be better in general. Like you kind of mentioned adoption and stuff like that. I think right now there's like at any given time, I think it's like 2 million couples ready to adopt, which is like 36 for every like child that's aborted. So I mean, there's lots of people. There's definitely a big demand for children, and usually in adoption, abuse isn't that common. That's more of like a foster care thing. The foster care system is totally screwed up. I think there should be reform in the foster care system. I think adoption should be made cheaper. And you've got like all these organizations and charities that help support people. Like I mean, just this past couple of weeks, there's this lady who she's pregnant, and like she's gonna have a hard time affording her birth, because we know the wonderful U.S. healthcare system. And then she's not going to be able to actually keep the baby. She won't be able to afford it. She's going to have to adopt the baby off. So I helped raise money for the birth, and this happens like all the time. So I'm for like taking these extra steps
yeah.
to help people. I don't just want to like ban
So
abortion and leave everyone to
so
fend
what
for
what about
themselves.
what about the biggest one, which is subsidizing contraception for areas that need it?
I mean, personally, as a minarchist,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like really the government's job to do
So you're okay with
contraception.
the government spending
But
billions on police enforcing abortion laws, but not millions subsidizing contraceptive use so those abortions aren't needed?
under a free market, that would help decrease the price of contraceptives. There's certain regulations that actually increases the price of some. And then I'm for like charities, like I mean, Planned Parenthood and other even pro-life charities have like free
Yeah,
contraceptives.
so I'm
So
asking you, would you be okay with subsidizing that so they have a ubiquitous availability to those who need them, thus not only decreasing the number of abortions, but also decreasing the amount of money we have to put in police? The more access to contraceptions that an area has, and the fewer unwanted births an area has, the less crime there is. It's actually a very strong correlation. In fact, many people attribute, in part, the decrease in crime following the 1990s, which was the highest violent crime rate we've ever had in this country, in
Oh
large
yeah,
part
yeah,
to an increase in the
yeah.
availability of
You're,
sex
you're talking
education.
about like the Freakonomics thing, right?
Oh, yeah, it's not the sole cause, but it is one of them.
Yeah, like that was Stephen Levitt and John. His name was like Do Know Who.
Mhm.
That was like they did this whole research thing, and I there was actually like quite a few flaws in there. Let me see. I have this in my notes actually. I
I'm
just
not
wrote this
familiar
down
with the specific
yesterday.
data you're looking at here, but the evidence
Yeah.
that the availability of contraceptions is massively beneficial to an area is to my knowledge overwhelming. I
Oh
think
yeah. I mean, contraceptives help decrease the amount of unwanted pregnancies. Like I wouldn't contest that. Those are like the main thing actually,
so. Why
because
not
those are the main
subsidize
thing
them?
that decrease abortions themselves. Abortion rates increased every year since Roe v. Wade until 1999, and that's when Plan B was patented. So I mean, I am for like non-restricted access to contraceptives. Like often in these other countries,
Well,
what
not
happens is
guaranteed
when they
access.
legalize I mean, it kind of conflicts with my political and economic stance,
But why
but like,
spend
I mean,
billions
I
on
wouldn't say
police?
I wouldn't say I'm completely close to it.
Okay, yeah, because the people would have to pay less taxes if that because police cost far more than contraceptives do. If it better to spend, a marginal amount of your tax dollar on preventative contraceptive care today than a significantly larger amount 18 years in the future when a bunch of unwanted children end up, like rapscallions taking their frustration out onto the streets. I don't
Yeah, I mean,
suppose.
I would still kind of disagree on the whole Freakonomics thing because that's kind of what you're referring to. That they're the ones who kind of drew that correlation because there really wasn't a correlation when you like kind of look at the data on a micro level. Because like the
There's I
crime
can't
rates
I
dropped.
can't let you get away with this. There's a huge amount of evidence suggesting that the availability of contraceptions leads to a massive number of benefits, including decreased crime, lower social spending in that area. Like the evidence, I don't have the data directly in front of me right now, but I know for a fact this is an incredibly well studied thing. I don't know about the Freakonomics thing specifically. I'm not up to bat for
Yeah, I
that.
feel like that's what it's referring to. I would like to like see your stuff. Maybe you can send it to me later. But I think that might be what it's referring to.
I mean, isn't the
Uh,
Freakonomics literally just like I've never seen Freakonomics. Isn't it just like a show or something like that, or like a radio
no,
show?
no, it's a book, and they kind of like published the study with the book.
Oh, I mean, there could be like more than just the one study, but yeah, I can. I mean, yeah, I can look into it. I guess I should probably listen to Freakonomics anyway. Um, it was a book for
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think there might be like two studies of it. I have one that actually showed a. Let me see. This one is from Yale Law School. John R. Lott and John Whitley, and they found that legalizing abortion increased murder rates up to 7%. I can send you this on Discord if you want.
Sure. Wait, do the murders include the fetuses?
No,
Because
I
then,
don't
by
think so.
definition, it kind of would, right?
No.
I have no idea how those two data points could be correlated, or causatively related. It's possible there's a correlation. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think this one was better than the whole Freakonomics thing. There was like a lot of issues that I was gonna kind of go over. I'll just give you like one example. I have several examples.
I have never read
But
the
the
Freakonomics, but I can't defend it. But yeah, hit me with
Oh yeah,
what's
that's
the thing?
fine.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of people that kind of know the argument. Like the crime rate dropped first among older people. So, of course, males between the age of like 17 and 25 commit the most crime. But for people in 1990, killers aged 25 and older, that's the people born before Roe v. Wade. So the whole abortion thing didn't affect them. So there was a 60% decline in the murder for those people in 1990. And there's a couple other things that it just kind of disproves the whole Freakonomics thing. But yeah, if you're
Well,
not
wait. A
necessarily using that,
60% drop in the
then
crime rate of a demographic that aged up doesn't disprove the idea that lower debt. Wait. Okay, there are a number of things here. First of all, those people are old enough to conceivably have had children that they were able to abort because of Roe v. Wade. So it's possible that the fact that they didn't have those children meant they had more spending money, which means they were able to improve their socioeconomic circumstances to the extent that they were less likely to commit crime. Additionally, the existence of a decrease in crime for that demographic does not necessarily mean that there wasn't a correlative decrease in the crime rate for people who were born adjacent to the generations that would have been affected by Roe v. Wade. Again, I haven't seen that data point. I'm just saying, like, this data gets really, really complicated. So I would have
If
to.
you go on to the younger people, like 14 to 17 years old, in 1993, the let me see. Yeah, the murder rate, it was 3.6 times higher than the kids that were the same age in 1984.
Wait, what was higher in between what two time periods?
84 and 93.
Well, wasn't the general crime rate super high at 93? I mean, again, I would need to take a look at all of this before I'd feel comfortable meaningfully responding to it. U.S. violent crime graph. Yeah, 1993 was literally the highest violent crime rate in the history of the United States of America. And I have a feeling, just because I've been around the block a little bit with data, that data might have been taken from like a single city, like Chicago or something. It's possible. It's not. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's just like the U.S. in general. That's like the FBI.
Okay, it could be U.S. in general. Yeah, I'd have to look into it. Anyway, I don't suppose I could sell you on. I don't suppose I could sell you on in a minarchist society having a state-funded sex education for everyone, right? You'd have like your regular crappy private education for everyone, and then you'd have a 30-minute segment afterwards where some dusty government employee would teach you how to put a condom on.
I mean, personally, I would think that private education is better. Like, obviously, that's my position. We don't have time to debate on education, but I would say that the private schools would cover that kind of stuff. Like, that would just kind of like go with it.
What if there are areas where the wealthy patrons of those education systems don't want to have their little kiddies exposed to?
Well, actually, I actually have I have a study somewhere that actually shows that there's a much less of a correlation with education. Like, that whole thing is more of a myth, that the sex education itself like drastically decreases unwanted pregnancies, and it's more like the contraceptives that are like the big thing. So I don't even have to defend that point, really.
Possibly. I mean, I've seen like states that have abstinence only education have like massively higher levels of teen pregnancy, like to an enormous extent. But it's possible that that's a correlative thing, and that it's actually the contraception.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's kind of what the study
maybe.
I was actually surprised to see the study, because like I've always said the same thing. Like, education plays a part in it, but it was like
you're taught how to use contraceptives
pro-choice
in sex ed.
I got it from someone's pro-choice document.
But you're taught how to use those contraceptives in sex ed, so it might be more
right. Yeah, I would say like just like in today's society, people just like naturally learn these things.
Nah, people have no idea how to put a condom on. They don't even show you properly in porn. You know, you have to pinch the tip. Nobody pinches the fucking tip. They have no goddamn idea.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'll send you the study, and if you want to go over, I'll go over it myself. I didn't actually look at it because like I was just going through his abortion doc and kind of like trying to debunk stuff, and that was one thing. I was like, oh, I guess that's doesn't really matter. I mean, I just assumed like it was fine. I didn't need to debunk it or anything.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I always appreciate more data to look at. Yeah, please throw that my way. I'll see if I can pull anything together, though. I have been legendarily busy these past few days. Apparently I have to go get a new camera, so that's going to be a fun little expedition today. I actually really appreciate you coming on. I think it's been a pretty fun conversation.
Yeah, I think it's been fun.
Do you have anything you want to shout out on the tail end?
Yeah, I've got like my Instagram if people want to check it out. It's Benjamin.politics. I had the Benjaminpolitics, but Instagram decided to delete it for some reason. They said it was for impersonation. Oof. And that kind of puzzled me. I was like, what?
Big tech censoring conservatives. It's happening live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I went like all Karen. I wasn't actually gonna do anything, but I was emailing this employee, and I was like, yeah, here's like my information because they're like, give us your driver's license and stuff like that, so we can
Mhm.
check it out and make sure it's you. And I did it, and then they're like, you didn't provide sufficient stuff, and I'm like, hey guys, you do realize it's like illegal to discriminate against people for their political views, and then but I didn't get a response, and I'm just like,
No,
okay,
you
I don't
did it.
care.
Okay, well, you pulled the gun. You should have sent them a
Yeah.
Steven Crowder video. Really, really
Oh
bring
yeah,
them
that
in.
would have helped. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd try, but I'm not gonna actually like do anything like that. I don't care.
Excuse me. Sorry. Caught on my
And then
phone
I
there.
got like my TikTok, which is Benjaminpolitics, and let me think. Yeah, that's
No
about
dot.
it. Actually, yeah, no dot, no dot. Actually, I did have one more thing as far as like abortion goes. Kind of like
Hit it up
I
quick.
just want to like see what your answer to this was. So one thing that really concerns me is like discrimination in abortions. Like you see in India, there's like a lot of the sex discrimination in abortions, and they
Mhm.
abort mostly females. And then in Western society, it's mostly babies with Down syndrome.
Mhm.
Like in some Scandinavian countries, it's like 90% plus of fetuses with Down syndrome that are aborted. And then in the US, I think it's like up to 70%. And then another issue, like I think that's a huge issue in itself. Like that's just messed up to me because I think that's like eugenics. And then another thing is like 20% of Down syndrome diagnoses, whatever, however you say it, in plural, are uh unreliable, like they're false, like 20% of the time. And I was just like today, I saw a video on TikTok, and this girl was like, the doctors told me that or the doctors told my mom that I was a boy with Down syndrome and to abort me, and she's a girl without Down syndrome. And then I looked in the comments, and there's a ton of people like saying the same thing, so I like did research, and like the actual thing is like 20%. So you have these first of all, like basically eugenics of people with Down syndrome, and there's no precedent for this because people with Down syndrome are like the happiest people on earth. like they love themselves, they love their families and their friends. Like I've got like this whole thing where people research it, and it's just like heartwarming just like reading it, like how happy people with Down syndrome are, and it's like, really great. And then but like I don't see why there's any reason to be aborting them so much. And then you've got 20% which aren't even people with Down syndrome. You're just aborting these babies for no reason. And
Yeah.
then hypothetically, I could sorry, hypothetically, like in the 90s, people thought they found like the gay gene and that they could actually abort fetuses that were gay. And I'm thinking, like, what if that was true? You could have people just wiping out gay people. You already have people wiping out people with Down syndrome. Like all that stuff is very concerning to me.
Yeah. I mean, for um, on an individual level, I think any of these people have the right, if they want to abort their kid. Though civilizationally, we're going to have to start making some pretty like big brain decisions when it comes to what extent we think it's acceptable for us to select for desirable characteristics in our babies. We're probably not going to be aborting that many quote unquote like gay gene type babies now. Maybe in the future, when we're going to get designer babies, you're going to see like wealthy black couples whitening the skin of their kids because that'll get them subjected to less social discrimination. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff down the line, but I would never use the threat of like a civilizational problem to impugn the individual right for a person
Mhm.
to abort their
Yeah, the
fetus
whole
if they so
the whole
choose.
genetic engineering thing is also an issue. Like back in the 70s, you had things like thalidomide, which pregnant women took to help them with morning sickness, and then they found out it was like a deforming baby. So these babies were being born without arms or legs, and like a lot of people are still around today from that time. There's actually a documentary on Netflix. It's called "Nobody Is Perfect," and it kind of talks about these thalidomide babies. And so, I kind of think of like, someone could hypothetically take thalidomide today and deform their babies. Like that's illegal at the moment, but if you kind of go with the whole body autonomy thing, then that should be legal according to that.
Uh,
So
I mean, if
that kind of
if that's how they wanted to do their abortion, I guess, then that's
Well, I
definitely
mean, it doesn't abort them. It just deforms them, and
well
then they're
that
born like that.
well then you wouldn't be exercising your bodily autonomy to remove you from sustaining a fetus. You would be exercising your bodily autonomy to inflict permanent disability on an entity that you expect to live out to adulthood, to become a person.
Yeah, I don't really see why we draw the line at deforming a baby, but not at dismembering it. But
Well, not dismembering it, but killing it, because we no longer, because it's not entitled to our sustenance. Anyway, before we
yeah,
before we
yeah,
get into all that,
wrap
yeah.
that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great meeting you. Yeah, I heard about you, like a few months back, because I could watch things like Think Club and Destiny, and then like eventually I saw like one of your videos, and I watched your videos like every now and then I started watching them like on a regular basis. Like I really enjoy a lot of your content actually, even though like we disagree. I absolutely love your debates with fascists because that actually helps me learn a lot. I don't really encounter fascists much anymore. I used to debate them a lot. But yeah, like the other day I was in this group chat on Instagram, and there was like mostly like paleocons and stuff, and then they started talking about like Jewish people, and then I went like using a bunch of your arguments, kind of debunking the whole Jewish question thing, and then like two of them they actually like kind of changed their minds on like the whole Jewish question, so I thought that was really cool.
hell yeah, I still haven't done like a proper video on on the um on the Jewish question yet, because it's an insanely
Yeah, you should.
difficult.
That would be great. Yeah. I actually saw this meme, like one of the dumb 4chan memes, and it's like showing people on Trump's cabinet, and it shows like like the blue people, but the thing is most of them weren't Jewish at all, and then some of them were like part Jewish, somewhere along the line. I'm like, these things are just flat out lies. Like, and people just accept it. They see this dumb meme and they just accept it. It's like, come on. And then like the numbers they use, they're saying like, I don't know, like 1.8% of people in America are Jewish, and it says that like that on the meme,
Mhm.
but that's talking about religious Jews. That's not talking about everyone who has like a little bit, like an eighth of
You
Jewish
can't. I
in
mean,
them.
if you
And
if you talk to
that,
them, like
yeah, that's like
48%
a
of
lot of
America is Jew.
people.
The only non-Jewish Americans are like white supremacists and Bible Belt like conservatives, and that's it.
Oh,
Those are the
even then, I've met some of them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm part Jewish."
yeah.
So
Hey, listen, one day we'll all be
yeah,
one day we'll all be Jews, brother. Okay, we'll all have the little
true.
hat.
Yeah,
All right. I
one
love you.
day.
Thank you very much for coming on. I really do
Yes,
appreciate it,
sir.
and I
Yep,
hope you
it's
have a
been
wonderful
great.
day.
Yes, you too. Have a good night.
Have a good night.